and welcome back to another episode of Rugby Unlocked, where myself and Mr. Mayor break down the game and try and educate the masses.
Absolutely,
Not just the youth, the masses, just in general. Especially because I think as things do start to change, I think there's definitely not like an understanding, like maybe like an appreciation from the older generations about how the game has changed. But we've had a very interesting few weeks and some very interesting things to get into with regards to how the Boks are starting to develop, how other teams are starting to develop. Before we get to that, Ronaldo, well,
Steve, all good. Thanks so much for having me back on the show with you guys. Everyone watching, hope you guys find this unlocked session very rewarding, and also that you guys can go to the game and have a different perspective on it. So quite excited. Thanks
basically what we are doing is we're doing your research for you. We're having the conversation that you can now drop some knowledge in the pub. On a Friday afternoon when people are sitting there saying, why did they do this? You can pop in and say, actually, because of this. So maybe stick around to get some very cool insights. But basically coming up, we're going to be looking at some various different parts of it. And the big thing as well is that for all our members, every week Ronaldo does a whole breakdown presentation on all the different things that we are looking at. It's a very, very in-depth PowerPoint, and we will be sending this out to all our members every single week. So if you'd like to have access to the analysis every single week, please do become a member. Link in the comments. There's the pinned comment, and you can get access to all the cool presentations that Ronaldo is doing. Right, Ronaldo, let's talk about this past weekend.
Yeah, interesting weekend.
Some very interesting games. Obviously, New Zealand edging Ireland. We had Japan being dominated by France. We had Australia signing off with a victory. We had a Fiji game where they almost came back almost beat Scotland. Scotland came back to win. South Africa dominating Wales despite a couple of errors, and then a very high emotions game with with England eventually coming up tops against Argentina. So we're into the Nations Championship few weeks. What are we noticing from a trends point of view and the way the teams are starting to play? Have we seen some surprises?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, let's acknowledge, just the way in which Joe Schmidt has turned around the Australian campaign. I think where they are, I think as an Australian group is healthy, I think for, world rugby as a whole. And I think that is kind of the trend that we're seeing. You see a lot more coaches coming in and having a positive impact when it comes to your Southern Hemisphere teams as well as your Northern Hemisphere teams. So I think Ireland being able to also, work hard and fight back was really nice. So I think two very big trends that we're seeing is a lot of players and a lot of, I think, teams are doing rapid. I mean, the most amount of tries that we've seen scored in the history of the game within a regular season. So the attacking mindset is something that has taken really shape, and we'll later on just discuss why the attacking shape is becoming an important part. And then the second tier is a lot more younger players that are obviously being allowed, that opportunity and given that opportunity. So that just shows you that coaches are not just thinking about historic evidence, but they're looking at, can I pick the right player? And I'm talking about not just South Africa, to look at Australia, Ireland, look at New Zealand. They've done their research in terms of who can be the best outfit for us on the day. So those are two big things that I've picked up within this Six Nations earlier this year and this Nations Championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you talk about the right players, and I think that was a big shift that sort of Rassie very much pushed back in 2023, and he sort of spoke about this is not about picking the best players, it's about picking the right players. And I think we're starting to see more and more of that, where there's so many people asking, well, but why isn't this player being picked? Nobody can understand why this player is not being picked. And, there's lots of different reasons. Sometimes it can be an attitude issue. Sometimes it can be a discipline issue. Sometimes it can literally just be, he's a great player within this system, doesn't fit in our system. And I think horses for courses is probably becoming a greater philosophy now, I think, more than ever. I think these days it's not about going and finding the best rugby players. We've got such a big array of players who are at the highest levels, but every single player has got very sort of intricate different details, which for whatever reason makes them suited for certain teams, certain systems compared to the others. But Ronaldo, let's get into the weekend review. I mean, the Bok game. Lots to talk about there.
No, absolutely. And I just want to mention one thing as well on that point that you've made there, Steve, is that you see a lot of these younger players coming through, but it's because the systems at the lower levels work. And the systems work because there's clarity in terms of identity. There's clarity in terms of purpose, because you need identity, find your purpose, obviously, after that, and then execution as well. And I think South Africa's, younger players shown this weekend that, listen, you can be backed by the coaches and you can execute the likes of Vusi Moya, obviously, on debut, Yaku Williams on debut. It was actually beautiful to see the town of Somerset East celebrate Yaku Williams. So shout out to the people from Somerset East. Well done on that, guys. So it's a situation of looking at the Wales Bok game. The Boks, or the junior Boks, kind of is what they've been dubbed. Them coming to the fray and actually executing it nicely. And again, South Africa, from a scoreboard reality, 43-0 is in retrospect smaller than what we would have expected.
Yes.
Would have expected 100-0. Some pundits were saying missed opportunities there.
Yeah.
But if you just look at the way in which South Africa had handled, scenarios, they left Wales kind of with absolutely, zero opportunity to kind of score points, and we'll get into that. And then again, it's a psychological win as well. Second consecutive big margin win South Africa has had over Wales.
Yeah, I think it's like 116-0
You
across
get
the last, or whatever it was. Yeah.
Correct, yeah. And so again, from our perspective, just the trenches warfare situation where it was just physicality was just phenomenal again, even though it was not our first team, but it was the right players to play against Wales and to have that physical dominance. Also, again, and I call them, we made a joke about it early on, Visa Bras, which brother, the Visa brothers, they were really well setting the pace in terms of how physically dominant they can be, but also how versatile you can be with the off-the-ball work. And then again, I think there was just a general, Carlos Sari coming on and just scrummaging, the Welsh guys into their next lifetime. I think there's just suffocating the opposition is kind of the theme that stood out. So it was really interesting, Stephen. We'll break down, various aspects of it. But again, back to the conversation that we had a little bit earlier in the segment, we said there are, methods to the madness, and there's different areas to it, obviously. South Africa has got something which a lot of teams at the moment are struggling to understand, which is this situation of they can create chaos and they can control the chaos. How chaotic is it that we've used 43 Springboks? Just can I get your take maybe on that ability of us to use 43 Springboks in 3 tests? Yeah,
well, that's I think the biggest thing, the fact that we've been able to use every single player. We've been able to blood, obviously, the couple of players we wanted to give opportunities to, from a game time point of view, your Ebens, your Lurts, your Sears. I think that's also, for me, what's also incredible when you think of the players you haven't played.
Yeah.
You've got a player base, if you look at the last year of 60, 70 players who have represented the Boks, when you think of all that you said, the 43 players who have played here, but that doesn't include Thea, Eben, Lured, Achia, Kwacha, Sasha, and so it's just the ability to be able to bring in so many different players within a system, keep your game plan, because it's not a simple game plan, but it needs to be simple enough that you can slot in, slot out. And I think that, for me, has been the biggest highlight, is that it's difficult to go and find players who've had bad games. Obviously, some players have performed slightly worse than maybe others, but in general, we've just got this system which is set up for people to thrive.
Correct.
And that's why Vusi Moya wasn't a shoot the lights out game over the weekend, but it was solid. A couple of mistakes, but a couple of nice moments, and it's gone are the days, and we've seen it, where players get thrown on and they get taken off 20 minutes, and they just look like a deer in headlights. They just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest takeaway at the moment.
That's good. And it ties into the following. There's something called transition play, which is a very big theme within attacking rugby, as well as some defensive systems. South Africa is able to create chaos so they can control the transition. And I mean this by, let's create chaos by calling for a scrum off the kickoff.
Yeah.
What do you do there? You now put the opposition under pressure so they can force mistakes, as well as you create an opportunity for you to obviously strike from there. So just something that I put up there to say, Springboks do not wait for the opposition to reset. They engineer their entire attacking philosophy around striking within 5 seconds of a turnover. That's something that is really unique to how these Springbok players have been, allowed to play in these past couple of tests. But it's a trend that we've seen across one. So just on that note, we're going to just play 1 or 2 clips of how do we see in the South African context, and I'm going to use a New Zealand example as well as South African example of how other teams are also, kind of do it at a lower level. Because people always think, but it's only the Springboks, only the All Blacks that can do it. No, at your club, and we specifically, our part of our Rugby Unlocked is to give you, tools and stuff that you can look at, take to your club as a coach, that they're either in Auckland or you may be in Spain or wherever you are watching, you can take these things that we're giving you and implement it there and give us some feedback. So again, the chaos that's created by South Africa to try and obviously make sure the opposition doesn't have any one form of opposition. Second, not able to kind of come back at us. And thirdly, at the end of the day, not being able to score points against us. So just let's look at this clip here and we'll just chat through it here. Two important things that I would like the audience and us to just maybe look at. Look at the line speed that is done by the defensive team to take defense into attack, and as well as look at the body position of the team ready to take that turned over ball and play it. So we'll just play through here. Just have a look there. Poor pass by the scrum half, but look at how that line speed is nice and high there. Guy have a nice strong tackle him. Jackal, probably Steve, and maybe you want to comment on this.
I just think the show, in terms of how to show a referee that you've released, might be the best single example I've ever seen. Man's basically like flapping his wings to show that he's not attached anymore.
That's brilliant. But just have a look there. He's over the ball. Most importantly, he takes the ball. He doesn't just clean over. A lot of coaches do clean over. What happens after that? You normally get the second guy, try and pick it up. If he doesn't get it right, it's a penalty against you.
Yeah.
Take a pro tip from this specific clip here. Take the ball after you've done that turnover and move forward so that you give your team the next part, which is go forward. Because now you've taken out those defenders. These guys are all ready to play the ball there.
Yeah, and you've got all your players running backwards. And I suppose that's, when you talk about chaos, now this is a case where this team, inverted commas, you kind of been told what to do in the situation, but you don't really plan for this.
Correct.
You don't plan for the bad pass. Now we're retreating. Now we're in an unstructured environment, and that's where the opportunities come.
Exactly, and that's a very important part. So what we're going to focus on in the Springbok one later on is that there was a nice hit that came through from defenders. Yeah. So when you are trying to get possession back, the hit is an important thing. Then obviously you choke the opposition by getting the ball back, and then you trap them in the sense that mentally they're not able to do it. And we'll see how South Africa did it in Wales later on. I do want to show another clip. This is from two South African schoolboy teams that played a while ago. But just again, look at the hit, the choke, and then the trap that was set there in terms of the transition. So just have a look here, Stevie. Here we go. Salbon attacking nicely there. Looks like a nice carry. He's tackled nice and down. Jackler in on the ball there. I just want to pause it right there. Jackler is right there on the ball, making sure that, you don't have an opportunity to move the ball. Good transition play that takes place here. Referee allowing the play to continue. Have a look at the prop there. What does he do? He plays the ball into space. Steve, that's phenomenal. Like transition is all about moving the ball so that the opposition cannot try and get that double turnover or anything like that. And just the passing, structures here, really good on the outside, acceleration, and just the interplay here at the end here. Not dying with the ball. A lot of players sometimes die with the ball here towards the end. Yeah. Wales had a couple of moments where they just had attacking moments, but South Africa would tackle this guy or intercept the ball here. And we'll see what the Jacob Williams try where Wales try to do something, but then there was enough South African players in and around that area. So your transition is depending on how many players you have in support here. Look at those grey boys there. Nice pass over the top. Phenomenal finishing there. So again, that's just from a breakdown turnover counter as well as the scraps that's in and around the area here. Make sure that you hit, choke, and obviously ensure that there. For us, a very important part of the Springbok game, that has become a set piece.
Yeah, our third set piece, yeah.
Exactly. And I don't know if you want to maybe comment on the third set piece that has become part of the South African game now.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of, I think a lot of people don't understand. Everybody still talks about the why do we box again. That's why we had to go back into it. And I think I still see the comments. I still see the the age old, if we kick like that against New Zealand, we're going to lose. Yeah. Which I think is a very simple take on way of doing things. I just think that what people need to understand is, again, we talk about creating the chaos, and you talk about that turnover and strike within 5 seconds. That's what those box kicks create. Yeah. Because if you lose the ball, we're backing ourselves defensively to be like, okay, cool, it's fine. We're going to basically force them to try and do a similar thing because we back ourselves. But the second we win back that ball, that's our 5-second window, because now it is, inverted commas, turnover possession.
Correct. Yeah. And that's phenomenal about the way in which the players have been, kind of educated at the moment with regard to that. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to, I know we wanted to chat one or two things, but I think maybe can we go to that Jacob Williams try and we just show that in real, real life where that has taken place. South Africa, just a phenomenal ability to just take, so we're just going to scroll through here. So Wales literally just came out of the sheds, Steve. Yeah. You've just been told, listen, change your game plan, try and not give the ball away to South Africa. You've come out with, okay, cool, we've got a plan. Now just have a look at this here. So we'll just play through it here. Everyone can see on the clip here. Vusi Moya kicks it nice and deep. Wales regathers there, a little bit unscrappy there, but just have a look in the way in which the South African team is present here. So put pressure there, good leg tackle there by Kobus Wiese, very nice there. Very interesting here that Jaco Williams initially is there, trapped there. He tries to get himself loose there. He does that successfully. Look at how long those Welsh players take there to just retreat there, obviously wanting to do what, Steve?
Well, also, as soon as you start seeing that, you can see Thomas Williams is shaping up for the box kick, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. So it's part of the DNA, which is all good and well. But can you retain the ball after the box kick takes place? Just have a look there. Doesn't get the distance as you would have liked to. Very good there. Presence. Previous clip we said about the more players you have available to receive the transition, the higher your chances are of successfully getting the ball back. Kobus Reiner getting the ball back there. Great offload. Fantastic stuff. Look at the interplay here, forward and back. Passing the ball on to Jaco Williams to score his first test try for South Africa. Phenomenal. So just back to our conversation that we had earlier on. It has become a very apparent thing in test rugby that you must be able to understand how to do your transitions and how to play it within your various areas of the game. So that's just fantastic how South Africa engineers pressure points that allows teams to be under pressure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the big thing, is that it's a lot of it. I mean, that try might look lucky in inverted commas, but there is and there is an element of, that ball could have gone back to a Welsh player, inverted commas, but it's engineering that this situation, within the situation, we're going to give ourselves the best possible chance of creating the counter attack and the likes of that. So you can never control the bounce of the ball, but you can control having enough people around the ball and the likes of that. So whilst there are always going to be your unknowns, inverted commas, how much can you control that situation, and within that situation, give yourselves the best chance or the most chances of creating the desired outcome, I suppose is the big thing. And I think that's what we're sort of seing here.
Correct, yeah. And again, we're engineering the error that the opposition obviously experiences. And I think in the presentation, there are a little bit more stuff that, those that are subscribed, you can read through there. Nice little bits and pieces there that we can obviously show to them. But I think we'll allow that to take place.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's the big thing. We can spend so much time on going to different things. So I really do encourage you. Please do become a member or part of the member of this club, and you can get all of these different, and you can kind of go through it. Even if you go and grab this and watch the next Bok game, rewatch the Bok game, and just find things to look at. Yeah. But the big thing over here for Rugby Unlocked is understanding the game, locking in, and educating the audience.
Absolutely.
So let's get into some understanding.
Absolutely. So again, South Africa don't just wait for the mistake; they physically engineer that. It's actually, and I'm going to check this on the recording there. It's something that I wrote on my notes, and I don't know if we said it in the previous segment, but it was there. So again, South Africa and engineering it. So for us, like you said, Steve, understanding the game is the most important part, and being able to do that. So for us, we're obviously looking towards the All Blacks coming in the Gravers rivalry to our shores. That's an important contest that we're going to have to face. And the question is the following: will South Africa be able to use their chaos against a New Zealand? Because traditionally, what have New Zealand been? They've traditionally been the team that actually causes chaos, right?
Yes,
I mean, how many times you can
we talk about the New Zealand flair, and it was always, again, their ability to turn defense into attack. On turnover ball, that's where they're electric, and that's where, and people always identify that as your exciting teams. If you look at a Lions, for example, I mean, and they're starting to get a bit back forward, but the Lions under Johan Ackerman, for example, who were the most exciting, again, inverted commas, yes, they're exciting in terms of they could conjure up try, but it was the turnover possession, the skill sets, and I think the skill sets where what's really allowed the Boks to start being able to do this a lot better, and that's why people say, oh, we're copying New Zealand, but it's that ability to strike on turnover ball.
Absolutely, and if you just look at the way in which South Africa has done that exactly, so the core philosophy that I've identified within the South Africa's blitz kind of defense is the following, and this came from 2019 as well, when Jacques Nidab identified Faf to do this. A lot of Super Rugby teams, Pro 14, well now it's URC teams, did it after that period. And South Africa fundamentally focuses on how they nullify that. So obviously we know New Zealand, and we're talking about chaos. They like dominant carries and dominant situations there. They normally, their playmakers is normally their 10, their 12. So they obviously have those guys that are able to just move the ball. So then on the outside is where your turnover counter happens. Remember the clip that we showed earlier on between Gray and Salbon? If you have wingers like a Yaku or maybe a Kirtley or even Kanan Moody that are able to make those good reads and make the tackle on the outside, what do you then have there, Steve? You have a good tackle there, leg tackle there. Your Jesse Kriel, for example, is in there, get a turnover. Yeah. What happens? Now we're able to have that turnover counter against New Zealand. So again, for us, when we look at the understanding of the game, is that South Africa will have to figure out ways in which we can, kind of close down that New Zealand outside attack, as well as those inside passes, and make sure that we get the turnovers. So that's an important part, because from the Reza era going to the Dave Rennie era, and again, we're using this as the relative scenario. I mean, they've obviously sacked Reza because what he probably did the worst is, instead of them getting those turnover counters that you used to get, they would not get that anymore. So now Dave is obviously in these past tests, have given a little bit more maturity in terms of their structure. What he's done is he's obviously looked at the high ability of their pass rate. I mean, I'll just go to the next stat for you just now. But for them, they are also very good in terms of how they pressure defenses over 16 to 20 phases. So can South Africa, with the likes of your Sia, I mean, even coming back there as well, you can still hear, but I mean, who are your big stealers? I mean, talk of the town at the moment is who's going to take Sia's position?
Or Paul de Villiers, yeah.
So the question is, will we be able to get those transitions, and will we be able to, change and change the outlook of what that will look like? So from an analysis perspective, the question that we ask ourselves sometimes is, or that I ask is what is it that we can take out of creating chaos, but then also controlling the chaos? How do you not get beaten by the chaos that you create? Because South Africa can also be beaten by the chaos we create. If the scraps are gathered by a more structured, All Black attacking team, or a structured defense that comes nice and high at them, that is the tricky part that I think South Africa will have to look at there, because there's an average 100+ rucks per game that we're going to have to see in that South African All Black game. What does that mean? Great opportunities for breakdown steals to take place. There's a lot, like 90+ average carries that is pass the ball. So what means pass the ball is there's going to be a pass. That pass can either be intercepted or, interjected by someone. So again, from an educational part and the way in which we're unlocking it is that we've now seen from South Africa's ability to create chaos against Wales, Scotland, as well as the English game. New Zealand has done the same. Yeah. Will this transition play be a situation where we see high scoring games between South Africa and New Zealand, or will we see a bit of a plump in terms of error rate? I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, I just think I look at some of the stats over here, and it's interesting because people talk about the fact that we only, like, South Africa kicks the ball and other teams don't do it. And I think it just shows that people don't watch other teams. Yes. The fact that when you're looking at that stat, that the total box kicks in the Nations Championship, you look like a Fiji, for example, and you've got the teams that are winning are genuinely kicking a lot more, but Dave Rennie's system seems to be a very different type of system.
Yeah, maybe on that point. So because other teams have not adapted to making their kicking game part of their set piece, they box kick, to the example that we use in the Wales game now. They box kick, but the ability to win that contest is where they're lacking. So we win the turnover. Yeah. New Zealand win the turnover, Australia win the turnover, Ireland win the turnover, France win the turnover, because they understand, listen, this is not just a kick that we just allowed to just bounce or whatever. But Fiji, for example, they did a couple of box kicks. What did the rest of the teams do? They tried to regather that, got that ball back, moved the ball into space, and scored tries. So your transition that happens with your kicking game and the way in which the game is flowing is what is a very important part. So just from us unlocking the game, the transition game, and the way in which teams handle chaos that's created is a pivotal part of the success rate, I think, of most of the teams that will be successful in. And I think when we go into our educational part, we'll show the guys just relevant things that they can implement in order to obviously be successful within that part of the game.
Yeah, I think it's just so interesting, because I think we're going to see two methodologies colliding in a month's time. As I said, you're looking at 21 box kicks across the entire Nations Championship. The Boks, for example, from a box kick point of view, they can get up to that in a game. Yes. Because it's so effective. So and that's where I think it's so interesting that there can be your conflicting methodologies, and it's going to come down to And again, now from a preparation point of view, because the New Zealand will be very aware of our chaos ecosystem, as you mentioned. And now it's about, okay, how do we diffuse that? How do we not get brought into the Bok game plan, inverted commas? And, some people might sit there saying, well, the fact that New Zealand aren't kicking, that might play against us, inverted commas. But similarly, because they're not contesting as much, inverted commas, you like to think, well, we've got an edge because we do that all the time. We're very good at doing that. So now you're forcing New Zealand to contest. New Zealand might sit there saying, well, we're going to take the contest away from you. And it's going to be a constant pull between how do I nullify what you're doing whilst ensuring I want to do what I want to do and make you play my game. But at the same time, you need to acknowledge that there are going to be times you're going to have to play their game. And
Correct.
How do you then beat them on that?
And I want to echo that point by, again, we've got 3 different stats up here. One is the stat in terms of their passes, right? So we've got to look at what line breaks mean for an attacking team. That means you've just broken the defense. The defensive team now has to adjust. That's a massive mindset change that you've got to do. So you've got to look for the offloads, or what happens when I've gone into the opposition's 22? Do I have enough players there to win that breakdown? Or like Will Jordan did this past weekend, ran back nicely. Ireland was literally thought they were going to go score there.
Yeah.
Ball stolen. Do you understand? So it's that mindset. What happens with that transition? Line break is done. Turnover opportunity there in the corner. Can it be done? Yes or no? Do your players have the skill set? Second part is, at that specific part of now, there's a dominant tackle that has been done. Okay, cool. Can I jackal? That's the second part of the turnover transition. Or am I going to concede a penalty? Because remember, transition also means it's that change of possession, meaning I'm contesting for this ball, which South Africa tries to do, but will we have either an illegal entry or will we be penalized? And then again, the last part of the transition is the kicking game, which is a massive set piece that has become part of it. So for us, unlocking and understanding that is just go into watching this All Blacks South Africa rivalry with this opportunity of asking yourself, can I identify 3 transition plays that can take place within this game, and why South Africa, for example, won or lost against that? And again, in our next one, I think we'll just chat a little bit more about the practical, obviously, application of certain things and the educational part there. So it's very cool.
Yeah, there's just so many different things you can kind of get into.
Yeah.
And I think what I've really enjoyed is seeing the All Blacks stick to certain principles, because somebody was saying that they rewatched a Razor game and they rewatched a Rennie game, and they're saying they're not seeing lots of differences, but I think when you start to look at maybe the intricacies of that, you'll start to sort of notice patterns. So that's not to say that New Zealand will never box kick, but where are they? When are they? As you mentioned, in terms of Wales, the box kick is a part of where they do it, but in particular instance, they maybe weren't doing it in a place where they traditionally would. Similarly, if you look at team selection, I thought Ellis Mee, I actually thought he had quite a good game from a contestable point of view, and he was a bit taller and stuff like that. So you kind of talk about now, how do you pick players to nullify those sort of those game plans? So it's going to be fun. But now we're going to be locking into the detail. And
again, so we've spoken a little bit more. I mean, we've spoken about how coaches translates this into watching a game. What is it that we can practically do to make transition part of my club reality, my school's reality? The way in which our development works. So a lot of teams look at the international standard, and we compare Dave Rennie with Razor, and then we will miss the final details. So Cam Roygaard is picked for a specific reason.
Yes.
He knows that this breakdown, we win this breakdown, but he will snipe around the breakdowns because he understands the pillar defense has been swamped in because now there's a contest. Remember, whenever a contest at a breakdown, what are you forced to do as the defending team? As the opposing team, you're going to try and have to clean me off that breakdown. If you don't clean me off, I'm going to steal that ball. So that means that's a turnover. Sorry.
I'm very glad you mentioned why Cam Roy got picked. Because obviously we've just had a reduced Springbok squad, and there's a big question mark in terms of why has Embrose Papier been let go? Why has Morne van den Berg come back in? Why is Rassie Erasmus? And that's interesting because I look at our 4 scrum halves, and I think that you've got 2 scrum halves who I think are relatively similar, and 2 scrum halves who I think you've got 2 and 2. And I think that Grant Williams and Kobus Reinach are probably almost complete in terms of favouring the different acts. But I feel like you look at a Grant Williams and a Rassie Erasmus, not to say Kobus Reinach isn't quick, because he is blitz. But the acceleration, the way that they can take a gap, that they can find sort of the space and the likes of that. And that's why they've often been deployed off the bench when we kind of bring it up. Like Rassie Erasmus, I think, has only played 1 game when he started. So people are asking, well, what does he bring versus an Embrose Papier? Well, there's that sort of side of it. What's Morne van den Berg bringing? Now we talk about again, what's your roles? Now, for example, he's a very good passer of the ball, very good technically sound player, very good defender, for example, solid box kicking option, the likes of that. So in terms of what we want from our scrum half versus what a Bulls wants from the scrum half, Embrose Papier was scoring tries for fun. He was a big part of the Bulls thing. Does he tick all the boxes of what the different other scrum halves pick? So I think that just that concept of asking, I think that player is better. Well, maybe in terms of what your rubric is, but your rubric will be different to another person's rubric. And that's where, and that's why it's so difficult to judge who's a better player, because within different systems, they'll thrive. Obviously, there are people who are technically, this person's technically a better kicker. He is a better tackler. He is a better ball carrier. But there's a lot of nuance to it.
And I think sticking to our theme for today, the understanding the chaos theory. So Ambrose, for example, could not handle a chaos theory when it came to the way in which Leinster nullified the Bulls. So you've got to ask yourself the question: if you are put under pressure, you're under the pump, you get hit hard defensively. If you are strangled in terms of ball possession, and at the end, if you are now put, like our theme said earlier on, you now struggle to obviously adapt. So the Springbok coaches look at, is this player going to be able to, when New Zealand turns the screws up on us, will they still be able to find these gaps? That's the question you've got to ask. Can we get a Grant Williams, who, for example, literally in that, I don't know if you remember that cross kick there, literally as the flyer's shoulders turn, Grant understood what will be the next step. You get what I'm saying? So against the Scotland game, Grant already knew my role is to play on the wing, and I understand I've got to read the play. So anticipating what the opposition does is part of transition, and the way in which players incorporate that in their game is what makes them stand out. So I don't speculate too much about why the Springboks make the decisions stuff, but just from my opinion, I actually didn't even think he was going to make it at all, because the way in which Embrose Papier plays for the Bulls and the way he plays for the Springboks are two different things. The reason why he scored that try was specifically because any scrum off, and I might get flack for this, but the gap was just open too. I mean, they overfilled it. There was two Scottish, the prop, Zander Vegas, and any scrum half should have been able to do that. It was our third time that we had the opportunity to do it. So within the system, it's easy, but can you do that when, pressure is on and you're able to, transition into playing different positions and stuff? So that's just from that perspective here. But I think where we are at in terms of understanding, the breakdown as well as what transitions and things happen, it always becomes a very interesting talking point when we look at other players as well.
Yeah. Well, let's get into what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So specifically when it comes to your breakdown and your screenplay, what they call basically your screenplay turnovers, which is obviously you're busy attacking, like we've seen in the clips before, as well as in the drawings there. This team is busy attacking. So Steve is playing against Ronaldo. Steve has got a 3-pot system. So there you can see the 3-pot there. So those guys are there. The Ruckers, for example, there. Now these guys get the ball. They're going to go around the corner here. They'll play here, or they'll play the ball out the back here. The reality that happens when it comes to, this specific play, and I'll show you a video clip for all of us to see afterwards just now. A lot of the times, there's different defensive structures to nullify different attacking systems. Right? So sometimes when your defense is nice and tight, which is what Grant and Faf and all those guys used to do for the Africas, where they really have a straight direct tackle on you. So meaning I hit you hard. So that's our first part there, part A, where the ball is obviously played out of the back. Remember, we are now talking about how do I get your ball to become mine. So meaning that transition that takes place between the two of us. So the All Blacks, and we have got that as the background there. The All Blacks have obviously that outside option there. Can we have an ability to shoot on those players, make a good, nice and solid, positive, what they call a double hit, get a turnover, and then the ball gets back to us? Or are we going to have to do that on the outside? South Africa has got the ability to do both of them. That's the beautiful part of the South African part. So, and I don't know if you want to maybe weigh in on that, because the two parts are, so one, obviously the ball out the back, so they exploit that stuff there. Yep. Love and all those guys. Can we nullify and get them to not do that? Two, the shift the ball wide, obviously there, the kick that's there. Like we said, can our guys at the back there defend those 50-22s? You're defending a transition. Part B is obviously when the ball has been spread out wide, and are they able to, obviously when New Zealand attack us there, can we, win that breakdown and get that score there? So it's the questions that we ask ourselves when it comes to that. Again, I think this clip here, this part here, Steve, we can maybe give to the guys in the special side there. So for us, in our little segment that we're talking about here is, do we understand how South Africa is going to prepare with our personnel to be able to exploit a New Zealand attack and a New Zealand defense? So that's the key takeaway there. Our next segment, we'll just look at the practical video clips for that there.
Yeah. I think
question. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, the interesting thing you talk about in terms of, they say the scrum halves. Now, scrum halves have always been so important defensively, and Jacques Niamba said basically that his defensive system revolves around stopping momentum.
Yes.
It's the hit is important, not the tackles. So, people will go and say, well, we missed 25 tackles, no wonder we conceded points. But you can then go and show a game where we haven't conceded points and we can miss 30 tackles. And he basically said, his metric for a good defense was how many points did we concede?
Correct.
How many penalties are we conceding in kickable positions? How many tries are we conceding? He says if we miss, and go back and watch that French game. I was watching it the other day, and it was just such an interesting way of looking at it. There were lots of missed tackles, but there were lots of times where you're running up on a player and he gets away from you. So that's now a missed tackle, but the next player is there. And you've now lost momentum. You've not been able to get the pass. So you might have missed 2 or 3 tackles, but defensively, they've lost 10 meters or they've lost the pressure. And that's where we need to see what the value is of the defense. What is the goal? Because at the same time, you can make 4 completed tackles and concede a try, because as the person's been tackling, if it's around the waist, then they pop and pop and pop, off we go.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, back to that question there. I mean, we have got to look at what will Ruben Love, as well as Mackenzie or Barrett, do against us. Will we be able to? And again, it's a question that we ask ourselves. I mean, we're trying to understand and unlock that. You're making a valid point. I kind of feel like there's a little bit of me that thinks that we're going to go back to that old system, because the way in which we've done our selection, but also how we've defended in the previous weeks of nullifying and eliminating those attackers and those guys that are able to just demolish defensive systems. Yeah. Awesome. So should we maybe go to the next segment where we're just talking?
So basically, so the whole point about this whole thing is to look at all the different things, and every week we try and do an educational system. And I think that's a big part of what we're sort of doing with the show, is to make the average rugby fan and the young fan and the old fan, and basically you're never too old to learn, and you're never too young to learn either. So the last segment that we do every single week is an educational segment, and we're going to be looking at different things. We did a box, we did a whole kicking breakdown last time. Ronaldo, what have you got up for us this time?
Again, back to Steve, our theme for today, which is specifically focusing, how do we, from a transition perspective, understand, first and foremost, make a very good hit on your position. So meaning trying to get that ball back. Second is, if I make a good hit and the ball doesn't spill or I don't get a pass that I intercept, can I, at the breakdown specifically, have a nice tackle, do that, and then obviously move the ball. The third one, obviously, we did touch on the kicking game, but what happens to the scraps? How do we create that chaos and kind of let teams kick unnecessarily? And we call that unnecessary kicks because they didn't really have a contest, because we've already nullified them. So we're just going to show, and this is a team that from the UK-based team, they did a drill, and one of the coaches, very cool guy, one of the guys that I worked with, and they did this drill in their training session. And I just want to show guys just a typical scenario that you can use. And normally we've got the board and writing, but I think visually today, we just want to show, and the video will be sent to the members, the guys that are
in the members club. Get your resources, coaches. You can get your resources as part of the members club.
Exactly. So we just want to show that drill. So we'll show it to everyone here, and just look at those 3 things that we're exploiting. And yeah, Steve, if you just maybe you go, just get into it there. I'm just waiting for this one to load. So just have a look here. So this training ground drill. So what happens there? You've got the hypothetical situation of saying, okay, cool. There's a defensive line that we have obviously set up. Look at how nice it is. The guys are starting on the floor. That just means normally, in rugby, there's tackle down, tackle down, tackle down. So it's maybe a sequence, it's now the 10 phase that you're defending against All Blacks. Now you've got to, still have your good line speed and obviously, get back to that point of, regaining the position. So just have a look at this drill here. So I'm just going to play through. So the ball's there, tackle has been made. So just have a look there. Now there was a turnover that has taken place. So say, for example, now there's a knock on or
balls come loose. Or half bad pass.
So remember the spacing there. And I want to just go one back here, Steve. I think this is an important thing to mention here. Just have a look at the following. So look at these guys here on the outside. Immediately, what are they doing? They're adjusting. So from an educational part, we want to make sure people understand. Remember, the reason why the All Blacks and the Springboks and all these guys, The reason why Jaco Williams was able to score that try is because who adjusted? Kobus adjusted. Well, both Kobus adjusted in this case.
Kobus squared adjusted.
You know, Kobus squared adjusted. So your players that are in support need to adjust. If they don't adjust, then you can't win this breakdown.
I think it's an important note to any young player. You are always in the game.
Correct.
You know, you can be standing out on the wing, the furthest person away from the ball, but you are in the game.
Yes.
I think that's where, you know, to steal a bit of a cricket comparison, we talk about when you field and the fact that you've got to expect the ball to come to you in terms of you are always in the game. So similarly here, yes, these two players in the yellow bibs might have been to affect the turnovers, but these two are immediately in here. So you can't just assume, oh, the ball's over there.
It's none of my business.
Once it gets here, then I can start worrying. You are always in the game.
So let's reflect back on that Selborne clip that we showed earlier on, Selborne versus Gray. Tackle was made, 2 Jacklers were in, the number 3 got the ball.
Yeah.
What did he do? He looked for player to pass the ball to. So if you're the 4th player, so the player just outside here, so if you see this player, the person here on the far right here, this guy here, if the ball was like just a clean steal here, he probably would have dropped back here and he would have retrieved that ball here. So yeah, I just want to play this through here, Stevie, just so the guys can see nice and clean over the ball. Again, they just pop it through the coach, they go around here. So again, we just sequencing certain things. So for example, now they're going to, again, defense here. So they pop the wall. So there we go. Other guys going to defense. So meaning there's always this continuation of just this. So you can do this on repeat. I'm just going to play it out again. Ball down, move the ball. You can just let the guys fold there. They've now, for example, again, you're cultivating that mindset of them knowing, listen, go defense, attack, defense, attack. So I just think that's a really nice thing to do for the guys that back it up.
As you said, the repetition.
Correct.
Because that's the big thing. The reason that people go with repetition is when you're tired, when you get to the last stage of the game, when you talk about the chaos, trust in what you know.
Yep.
And it's that repetition of understanding, okay, this is where I need to be.
Yes.
I need to do this. Cool.
Yep.
And not trying to always within the game try and feel like you can now reinvent the wheel and think about the game. The whole point, I think, is to try and make it natural.
Correct.
And that's where I think players, when you talk about players' ability to be able to adapt, is that their systems are so good, their preparation is so good that it just comes naturally. Whilst it might look like, players like McKenzie, your Russells, Marty Boks to a certain degree, people always call them mavericks and kind of think that, they take risks, they just try Hail Marys the entire time and therefore they kind of just play off the cuff. I don't think they give them enough credit as to how much prep has gone into playing off the cuff.
Correct.
In terms of the repetition of, in this situation, these are my options, I've practiced this, and therefore when Marty gets the ball, he looks and he sees, okay, there's a chip that's on, there's a cross kick that's on, there's also a pass. He's put himself in so many scenarios that he knows that those are my options, and it becomes natural. It's not suddenly thinking, because it's a split-second decision. You're not looking and going, oh, hang on, no, it's a split-second, cool, boom, here are my options.
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head there, Steve, by saying this is what the global players and playmakers, this is what they do on a daily basis. So I think takeaway that we want to give to the guys today is to make sure that if you want to be a holistic player, you've got to be able to understand the chaos and how to understand, how do I get the transition to be my transition? How do I force the player to make a mistake? How do I make sure that team goes out of their system so that it benefits me? Again, back to our theme we spoke about in the beginning. South Africa do that a lot, where within 5 seconds, if you don't make the decision, I'm going to make the decision for you. If you're not going to come and, able to, come up with a nice creative attacking plan or whatever, we want the ball. We want to score. And that's why they scored over 40 points against Wales on the weekend. It's a very important thing. And I do want to maybe show the next graph here, Steve, which is just have a look here at this graph here. Just to your point. So from a global playmaker's perspective, just how amazing is it? Intermark paired with Jalibert and Ramos. Those are 2 players that transition the best when it comes to France. And I just want to highlight certain players just so that people can have a frame of reference. When they think of transition, who do they look out for? In a specific, part there. For us, from an educational part as well, we want to make sure people go away and understand, listen, these are the people that actually I can look at and trying to find, transitional players. I mean, for us, the combination of Grant Williams and Pollard, a lot of the time, Pollard is very accurate with the kicks. Grant is phenomenal in terms of just understanding, because Grant chases a lot. A lot of people don't see this. Not just the winger that chases. Grant has that inside line that he does.
And how often does he score tries? Because you always want the clipboard here, but
100%.
The wing's gone out there and Grant's just said, I'm going to occupy this space, because as soon as he gets back, bang, there I am. So again, in terms of you might be in another field, but as soon as that ball comes back inside, you need to be ready. And this is where I think where people ask, why do we pick Billy LaRue, for example? You go back to these kind of scenarios and think, but again, the multiplayer maker system and combinations. So if you're going to play a Pollard, for example, Billy LaRue complements him really nicely. If you have a Willemse at 15, if you've got Mani at 10, for example, you don't have to worry necessarily about a second distributor. You can have much more of a running threat in inverted commas at 15. And I like the fact that you put like a Tupolotto, because Tupolotto's a big guy, but his distribution is sensational. Completely different player to a Damien Delende, who is a good passer of the ball, but he doesn't favor kind of the soft passes and the soft skills that a Tupolotto go. But again, it's how do you find several playmakers across your kind of backline, and even within your forwards as well.
Yeah. So just on that note, I want you to just the second part here. You obviously made the play. So if a 10, for example, and they get stuck, you've got to be able to move the ball to a second playmaker, which is your 12 and your 15. And a lot of the times, Mani sometimes on a defensive perspective has been caught lacking. Yeah. But then you've got a defender in Willemse that's able to, like he did with Caleb Club. Unfortunately, there was just enough support play for it. But he's able to still, in a defensive system as well, cover you. Playmakers are not just on attack. They're able to play what we call transition. Yeah. Rugby is transition. It's the ball moving between me and you. The best players are the players that understand the transition and how to control that chaos.
When it came to picking our wings, for example, within the Jacques Nienaber defensive system, it was right. If we're going to rush up and make the hit, we need to have people who are good enough cover defenders that if they do beat the blitz, we can get across. And that's where Kurtley Arendse and Chesson Colby became so valuable in terms of, and I think that's why, I personally think that's why Rassie Erasmus likes Henk van Wyk so much.
Yes.
Because I think you look at the system and you think, because he's got that dive tackle, inverted commas, where he is so good at that cover defense. Morne van den Berg, I put it out on the X yesterday. I said, do you know how many games Lions have lost? Because go and watch how many last man tackles he makes, how many last ditch cover defense, and it's that ability. If they've now they've beaten the blitz, okay, now what? But now you've got players who very specifically, and that's why I mentioned Henk van Wyk, Kurtley Arendse, as you said, Damien Willemse, players you can get across and make those cover tackles, because now you've got your two lines. You've got your initial break, and if they do, it can't just be like, oh, well, they've beaten us,
correct,
off we go. No, what are the actual systems? And then you have to be very intentional with the players. Jesse Creel, similar type of thing. Such a good defender and can cover across and make those sort of tackles.
Absolutely.
So it's combinations. Well, I always talk about it as combinations.
Combinations. And maybe it speaks to the next point. A lot of times, teams get caught out because they can't defend for more than 17 phases. Steve, you do all of the watch-alongs, and you just see this relentless attack, relentless attack. Can you, and there's a bit of a conversation happening in the background saying that the good teams know to put you away in 10 phases.
Yes.
And that's all good and well. But we've seen the past weekend and a couple of weekends as well. It's now moved up because,
But this is what won us the World Cup. You go look at even at New Zealand, and there was, and even in France, like, Evans knock on, how many phases came after that? And it was the Boks ability to just, and that wasn't even the blitz defense. It was just tackle after tackle after tackle, relentless line in the sand. And that's, I think, to a certain degree, that's kind of almost when the systems go out the door. At the end of the day, there's not that much systems when you're on your try line. It's very simple. If he's got the ball, he cannot go past you.
Correct.
Like, yes, we can make sure we're folding, but it also now becomes a you versus me. So it's funny how rugby is so complicated, and then certain things, it become dead simple. If you're picking the ball up, it's you versus me. When, like, Thomas Satoya, for example, bounced off Ellis Genge, that's a simple one-on-one, and that's kind of sometimes also be the difference, is that just line in the sand, I'm going to make the tackle, therefore you're not going to score.
Correct. So, again, because we're focusing on our educational part, the question is, again, New Zealand is coming. They are a phenomenal team that can build phases. Can we defend, and can we, that last part there that's highlighted, the breaking point, are we able to get them to break? Can we, and again, we ask, I know this is an analysis show, whatever, but I think for us, for me and you, it would be so interesting to figure out, what do you guys think? Like, when will South Africa be able to get and force that turnover counter and force that possession to come back to us? Because, New Zealand is dangerous when they've got the ball in hand.
Can we force them to go, shit, this is just not working. I need to try something. And I think it was in the NFL, and there was a child asked and said, you coach defense, what is more important, ability or attitude? And I think it was the same thing. And that's what Jacques was so good at. He basically, and we've all seen the speech in terms of you weren't supposed to be here. And that's what they're saying, like 13 to 17 phases, that's not an attitude. And that's also, where can I pick somebody who's got that, literally, who's got that dog? Who's willing to say, I will tackle, I'll make 5 tackles in a row. Absolutely no issue. And you get some players who absolutely froth for it. Like something like a Franco Mosses. If you go and say, listen, Frank, I need you to make 30 tackles, he's like, I'm in.
And that's what you need. Educational part for us is that how do we get coaches, and especially I think people that are building, rugby players, and not just boys. The ladies' game is, the women's game is bombed up as well. How do we get players to, like we showed in that video clip, it's now 10 phases in, you still have got to make your hit, you still have got to make them suffocate, and you still have got to be able to get that ball either from a jackal or you get the spoils, the turnover that's happened there, and you're able to move that ball, because that's going to determine, like you said, who wins at the end of the day. Can you have that dog in you that you are able to come out and say, listen, we've done a phenomenal job in, winning this very strong, structured, attacking play, physically, big, outfit. So it's going to be quite interesting watching the South Africa against Australia, New Zealand showdown take place.
It's going to be a very interesting tactical battle. Ronaldo, thanks so much to go through. Make sure that you come and check out Rugby Unlocked, releasing every Sunday. So much to go through. Also, again, get your comments in. We had a couple of requests that we are looking at and trying to build our schedule to make sure that we answer some of your guys' questions. So please do get your questions in the comments below. Ask for certain parts of the game that you kind of want to break down, and we will do that here on Rugby Unlocked. Ronaldo?
Stevie, it's always a pleasure chatting to you, but thank you so much for again, your questions and your insight. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for also joining and watching.
Thank you for jumping on and for all the big analysis. And a reminder, you can get all this presentation and the likes of it, all the analysis from Ronaldo by becoming part of the members club. Make sure every Sunday we've got Rugby Unlocked. Every Wednesday, the Mad Show. So much cool things coming up, especially with the greatest rivalry. So lots of cool plans. So make sure you keep it locked and unlocked on Forever Sports, and we'll see you guys all next time.